Hey everyone, so we're back. And kind of what I was afraid of is came to pass. It was these fairings for the tailplanes, and they're just horrible. Here, show you. So once you cut them, you know, out of the plastic or whatever, you get what looks like, kind of the proper shape, pretty close. No matter how clean you go to cut it, you're going to have these raised edges on it. I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about, but there's a pretty massive. And so going in and cleaning that is just more reduction. It's going to make this part even smaller. And if we look at it, and here you see that I went ahead and used my 1/16 square stringer stock from the kit. Stuff I didn't use, building up the tail surfaces. So don't throw that stuff away. Keep all the strip stock that you end up with after a kit's over with. I just throw everything into one box. So 5, 6 different, maybe 8 kits worth of strip stock and whatever I can, keep that looks like it could still be used for something. I just throw that into, one last man standing box, if you will. And so anyway, you can see how much smaller this plastic would have had to. They picture it lapping the last bulkhead here, so overlapping it by 1/16 of an inch, and that leaves you really short here at the back. Also, it just doesn't have the width to do that. So then if you're going to just butt join it to that bulkhead, now you're going to take a 1/16 strip stock and line this edge so that you have more of a gluing surface to do that, to butt join that to the last bulkhead. So now you've got a 1/16 of an inch balsa gluing surface along with whatever the thickness of this plastic is, and it's still just not enough. With nothing backing it, somebody's going to, just in handling the model, just getting it finished and taping it up and painting it and all that stuff, you're going to put your finger through that. So it's too small, it's a little bit too nasty with these edges. Just not going to, it'll take forever to clean that up if you did get it installed, and in the process of sanding it and cleaning it or filling around it, you're going to put your finger through it. So instead of that, I just ran the strip stock back, kind of like the way you would plank a ship model, and you just go with a 1/16 stock, line the bottom edge where you want it, then line the top edge with a length of the strip stock, butt joint here at the back of this bulkhead, and then start laying them in between, cutting them into that narrower and finer wedge shape as you get towards the back of the airplane. And then intermediate to those are more 1/16 strips, just very short cut but fully wedge shaped to fit into whatever those triangular shape openings are, until you've got it filled with balsa. The other option is to cut sheet balsa to shape, but then you've got to form it to get that radius down the length of it, and so on. And that's that's time consuming. When just laying in the strip stock, you can get it just to the right shape. So you can see there's both of them in. Now that's just one layer of the spackle here. So it's going to take 1 or 2 more spackle treatments and sanding of the edges, and then some of the sand and seal over the top of that, and a little more sanding. But you can see we got a nice tight fit here to the airplane giggity all the way around, top and bottom of the horizontal surfaces. The vertical tailplane, we got a nice clean line all the way out to the tip of the strake here, the fin, the dorsal fin, if you will. Some would call it a strake, some it's a dorsal fin, what have you. But you want that, that filler. So the first thing that goes down is a bead of white glue that you then drag, almost like you're caulking a tub. So you're going to do that, and then once the white glue is dry, you come back with the Sherwin-Williams, and you just wet it 50-50, and then you do the same thing. You're basically caulking that line with just the end of your finger, or with in this case I think I used, I dragged the spatula here all the way down the length with the filler, and then wet the finger and pull off the excess from either side, so that you end up with the caulking. The only place it can't come out of, based on that maneuver, is the area that you want it in. So I don't know if that makes sense, if you're following that. But you can't, in other words, you can't lose when you do it that way. It just goes right where you want it. Okay, so that's how you get the nice clean joints with your balsa to balsa, horizontal to vertical surfaces connections. Same as with the, the nacelles to the engine, to the wing. You want to get the same. You want to do it the same way I just showed you here, is with the caulking, and I mean not with the caulking, but with the white glue, and then with the spackle over the top. And then just a little bit of light sanding with a 400 grit. And what you want to do when you're sanding this is, in this case, because this is the first stage, I used 150 grit. Check that, this is 220 grit. 220 grit, you roll it up, and then you flatten the ends of it like so. And you can sand and get that clean line all the way down, right? Depending on how much you flatten it out. And and then you come back with your, either keep it rounded like this, and you can sand on this area without digging into it. And then you come back along the bottom edge, and again, however skinny you want that joint to look, that's what your fold would look like on that roll of sandpaper. Okay, that's tips and tricks right there. So that's how I do this. Your mileage may vary. Other modelers may have found different methods. And as I said, there's going to be a couple more applications of the filler here, and a little more sanding on some of there's still a few high spots just down here on this side. This side went in real smooth. I kind of wish I'd done it at the same time. I did this one at night, and then the next day I did this when it was getting late. And one of my few rules or tips, or if you want, whatever, is if you're working on something that has symmetry on the model, you try and get it done. So like in this case, it would have been, if I would have followed my rule, I would have done both sides in that one stretch of time, only because you're developing a feel for something, and you're also you don't have to remember, well, what did I do? And this, it's all fresh, and you're doing, both sides at once, and so on. It's not always going to be there. You're not always going to be able to tell the difference. But in this case, I can see that I did something just a little bit differently when I was doing this side. But it's okay. It's sandpaper, filler, and the sand and the sealant product. They're my friends, and they'll help me get through and get these, get that fixed. But anyway, that's another kind of important, tip, is when you're doing something that has symmetry on the model to it, as for instance these two fairings, best to do them at the same time. In other words, don't do one side and then say, well, then maybe, because it could have been the next morning, it could have been 2 days, it might have been a week before I could have gotten back to the project. And that's another thing, is you just never know. When you set something down, at the end of the day, you may or you may not get right back to it. If you get the flu or something else happens, it comes up, and pulls you away some real world situations that you got to take care of. And for that reason, not just it might just be overnight, and something, but because you just never know if that is going to be just 6 hours later, 12 hours later, or 3 days later, a week later. And so for to try and keep the symmetry happening, it's best to do that work all at once. and not, not put it off. Right. Belabored the point, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, so finish up these two fairings. This doesn't bode well for the large wing fairings. I gotta say that. I think what I'll do is hedge my bets. So when I put the wing on to the plane, there are these huge openings that you can see on the side of the airplane down here and here and here. Not right here so much. But once that's fitted up in there, because the wing rests on this cradle, and you can see the gap right here, obviously the wing isn't going to be touching any of this. So that's a huge air gap, and it doesn't work when you're using filler. To have a big gap like that, can't just start packing filler, because then it's going to end up all into the wiring and into the inside of the airplane. It'll be breaking off and rattling around, and the next thing you know, we got more of a musical instrument than we have a scale model. So, maracas kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is, once I get the wing fitted on here, I'm going to take the balsa strip, probably the strips. This might lend itself more to using sheet stock and cutting pieces to fit, but I'll look at it either way. These openings are going to have to be filled. That way, if these plastic fairings don't work, I can go straight to filler. I can go straight to the spackle and make my own wing fillet, wing fairings. Like you see, even if this does work, I don't want there to be these big openings here. I think I want whatever's behind those fairings to be, to be balsa, not just be open, big holes. Okay, so the project's going to slow down a little bit on that note, just as it was slowed by this. Not to any huge degree. We're going to keep rolling. And you can see how it's coming together. We're going to have the wing mounted on here shortly, and then I'll be able to pop the gear in, friction fit the way it is, and just get a look at the stance of the airplane. She'll be standing up for the first time probably in the next couple of days, 2-3 days. And I didn't, when I was fitting the engine nacelles on, I didn't think it would be coming together that quickly, but those went on really well. And in spite of the delay and not being able to use the plastic on these fairings, the ones that I fabricated are working. They're gonna be fine. They're gonna look right, so that's good. Right. So what remains is getting the wiring connected, making sure everything works before I button it up. So we'll be testing the lighting before we actually attach the wing, and then we'll be fitting the covers for these openings. And then we'll be pulling those wing fairings off of here and checking them to see if they work. Okay, so we'll see. Time will tell. And then it will be on to fabricating propellers, painting and detailing the two motors, painting the insides of the cowlings. You want to see how those fit. Let me just do that real quick. So as I said, the nacelles went together really well, and as you can see, the cowlings just snug right up to the plastic, and they fit really nicely onto these nacelles. Okay, so we got a pretty good fitment all the way around on the cowlings, and then get the cowl flaps, which I'll be modeling partially open, as they pretty much were always partially open anyway, or in trail on the DC-3. You almost never saw a DC-3 with the cowlings, cowl flaps closed. And really the only time you would see that is maybe on descent to landing, to prevent shock cooling of the engines as they were in idle on a descent. That might be the only time they're closed, but for the most part, on this airplane with the twin radials, the cowl flaps are going to be open. So we'll model them just slightly open. All right, so there's that. Now the wing still needs 2 or 3 more spackle and sanding treatments. And I still need to decide how I'm going to do the flaps on this one. I did want to model it with the flaps down. I'm still thinking I'm going to do that. I just like that look, gear down, flaps down. You know, the dirty look of an airplane on final approach. Always preferred that to anything else. It also works for an airplane parked on the ramp. So it's just a look that I like for most model aircraft. It adds that extra little bit of detail and a visual aspect of the airplane that, you know, just adds more interest when you're viewing an airplane model, I think. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so work progresses. Lots of stuff yet to do, but you can see that, you know, making your own fairings isn't, you know, it's not a killer. It's not a deal breaker. It's not that hard. You just try it one time. What I did when I first started this, I got a real basic Guillow airplane. I think I got the Cessna 170. First time I did infill, and it's not an expensive model, and it's very small, and it was a quick build to get the skeleton, you know, built up. I mean, the wing was only this big. The fuselage is even smaller, and I did all the infill and sanded and smoothed it and everything else, and it looked great. But I wouldn't have attempted this airplane for a first, if you know what I'm saying. I wouldn't do the PBY from Guillow as your first infill project, or to try these methods. You know, start off easy and small, build a Piper Cub, you know, and go from there, to get the technique and to get the thing, and then to work on, you know, filling these gaps and seams with the spackle and the sand and seal. I wouldn't use anything else but this in surface prep. And I mean, I don't know if you can see what I mean, but if you look at that fuselage, you can see how smooth that is. And if you could feel how that treatment, that sand and seal, has conditioned the balsa and kind of changed it, hardened it, and so forth,